50,000 years ago, two humans could look at the sun and see completely different worlds. One saw an enemy. One saw a lifeline. For nearly 2 million years, every single human on Earth had the same hair. Thick, coiled, jet black. It wasn't a style choice. It was armor, forged by the African sun to protect the most important organ we have, the brain sitting just beneath the scalp. But somewhere between the savannas of Africa and the ice fields of the north, that armor started to crack. Black turned to brown. Brown turned to copper and gold. And in the coldest corners of the ancient world, hair turned as pale as frost. This wasn't a costume change. It was written into our DNA by hunger, by sunlight, and by survival itself. So what actually forced nature to bleach the human body? Was it a flaw evolution failed to catch, or a desperate gamble that saved our species in the cold? Today, on Half Evolved, we're tracing the hidden genetic code that turned humanity from a single black-haired lineage into the most colorful species of hair on the planet. Before we go back in time, one quick thing. We're building something bigger than a single video here, a full visual map of how the human body was shaped, piece by piece, over millions of years. If stories like this one pull you in, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we're only getting started. Every subscriber helps us keep building this digital museum of human evolution, one strand of hair, one bone, one gene at a time. Done it? Good. You're officially part of the half-evolved tribe now. Let's go back to the very beginning, to a time before hair had any color at all to lose. To understand why hair eventually turned white, we first need to understand why it was black for almost the entire span of human existence. In equatorial Africa, roughly 1 to 2 million years ago, our ancestors lost most of their body fur. That left bare skin, and eventually, dense, dark head hair, directly exposed to some of the most intense ultraviolet radiation on the planet. The sun here wasn't just light. It was a slow, constant assault of radiation, capable of damaging DNA with every passing hour. The body's answer was a pigment called eumelanin. Produced inside specialized cells called melanocytes, eumelanin is the dark, dense pigment responsible for black and brown hair, and it works like a built-in radiation shield, absorbing and scattering UV rays before they can reach deeper, more vulnerable tissue. This wasn't only about comfort. It was about reproduction itself. High doses of ultraviolet radiation break down folate. That's vitamin B9, circulating in the bloodstream. Folate is essential for healthy cell division and fetal development, meaning a folate deficiency in early pregnancy can lead to devastating birth defects. Thick, dark hair covering the scalp physically shielded the head and the blood vessels beneath it, helping protect that folate supply in a UV-flooded world. So for nearly 2 million years, black hair wasn't just common. It was mandatory. Any mutation that lightened hair or skin in equatorial Africa would have been aggressively erased by natural selection. Pale hair here wasn't a fashion disadvantage. It was, quite literally, a survival disadvantage. For most of the human story, evolution allowed for exactly one hair color. Everything changed around 55 to 70,000 years ago, when groups of humans began pushing north out of Africa, following coastlines and river valleys into the Middle East, then deep into Europe and Asia. The sun that had shaped our ancestors for 2 million years began to disappear. Northern latitudes receive a fraction of the ultraviolet intensity found near the equator, especially through long, gray winters, and that created a brand new survival problem. The exact same eumelanin that once saved lives in Africa was now working against these migrating humans. Here's the trap. The human body needs UVB radiation to manufacture vitamin D in the skin, a nutrient essential for calcium absorption, bone strength, and immune function. Dark, dense pigmentation is extremely efficient at blocking UV radiation. In Africa, that was the entire point. But in the dim light of Northern Europe, that same efficiency now blocked the one resource the body desperately needed to make vitamin D: sunlight itself. This mismatch created enormous evolutionary pressure. Populations that happened to carry mutations for lighter skin and hair could absorb more of the scarce UVB available and produce enough vitamin D to survive, while more heavily pigmented individuals faced rising rates of bone deformity and weakened immunity. Over thousands of years, this single nutritional pressure reshaped entire populations. At the center of this transformation sits a gene called MC1R, the melanocortin-1 receptor. Think of MC1R as a switch sitting on the surface of every melanocyte, deciding which type of pigment gets produced. When MC1R is fully active, it drives the production of eumelanin, dark brown and black pigment. But when a mutation weakens that switch, melanocytes shift toward producing a second pigment, pheomelanin, a reddish-yellow pigment that offers far less UV protection, but happens to be the reason for red and strawberry blonde hair. In Africa, a weakened MC1R switch would have been a genetic dead end. But once the punishing UV pressure of the equator was gone, those same mutations were no longer being eliminated. They simply started to spread, not because they were actively better, but because nothing was killing them off anymore. Scientists call this a relaxation of selective pressure, and it's one of the most important reasons humans exploded into so many different hair shades once we left Africa. There's also a fascinating secondary theory worth mentioning: sexual selection. In small, mobile hunter-gatherer bands migrating through Ice Age Europe, a rare hair color, a shock of copper red or pale gold in a population of brunettes, may have stood out as novel or desirable. Some researchers argue that this preference for rarity could have accelerated how quickly these new colors spread through small founder populations, working alongside, not instead of the vitamin D pressure. Genetic evidence even suggests we weren't the only human species experimenting with this. DNA extracted from Neanderthal remains has revealed their own independent mutation in the MC1R gene, one never found in modern humans, suggesting that at least some Neanderthals may have carried red or lighter toned hair entirely on their own evolutionary path, separate from ours. We're halfway through this journey, and the science is about to get even more extreme. If this breakdown of human evolution has your brain buzzing, drop the word "ovul" in the comments below. It's how we spot the real history fans in this community. And if you've learned something new so far, a quick like on this video helps us reach more curious minds just like you. All right, let's push north into the ice. Now we reach the most extreme end of this transformation. Hair that lost almost all of its pigment, appearing pale blonde or, in rare cases, strikingly white. This wasn't simply hair running out of color. Depigmentation is an active biological process, a gradual reduction in melanin production, as the body reallocates its resources toward the traits that mattered most for survival in an unforgiving climate. Less melanin meant a body more efficient at capturing every fragment of scarce Ice Age sunlight to keep vitamin D synthesis running. There's an ongoing scientific debate about whether pale hair carried any advantage of its own, beyond simply following pale skin. Some researchers have floated the idea that lighter coloring might have offered subtle camouflage advantages for hunters moving across snow and ice. Others argue it was almost entirely a side effect. Pale hair just came along for the ride as skin pigmentation dropped in response to the vitamin D crisis, rather than being selected for on its own. What makes this story even stranger is the timeline. Ancient DNA studies have shown that some of our most iconic ancient European features didn't arrive together. Cheddar Man, a 9,000-year-old skeleton discovered in England, is believed to have had notably dark skin, paired with genetic markers suggesting blue eyes. Pale skin across much of Europe appears to have spread more recently than many people assume. And truly light or white blonde hair looks to be one of the last pieces of the puzzle, potentially becoming common within only the last 10,000 years or so. A genuine blink of an eye in a 2 million-year story. In other words, for most of the time modern humans have existed, nobody on Earth had pale or white hair. It's one of the newest features on the entire human body. Our hair color was never a fashion statement. It's a living map of where our ancestors walked, what sunlight they fought against, and what nutrients they were desperate to hold on to. From the jet black hair that shielded our earliest ancestors under the African sun, to the copper and golden tones that spread once, that pressure eased to the pale, pop, almost white strands that helped humans claw out a living in the frozen north. Every shade on your head today carries a piece of that 2 million-year negotiation between our bodies and our environment. We are not a species defined by one look. We are a species built to adapt, generation after generation, gene after gene, to whatever world we found ourselves in. So tell me, of everything you just learned, what part of your own hair's history surprised you the most? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you want to find out how our eyes evolved next, click the video on your screen right now and keep going down this rabbit hole with us. Thanks for being part of Half Evolved. Stay curious. Stay evolved. I'll see you in the next era.